let's have a look at how I structured the breakdown and how I use send and returns to create a really interesting breakdown. So we'll work from top to bottom through the breakdown. So first off, we have the kick roll. All I'm doing there is just automating a filter and a utility as well. So I'm controlling the frequencies, but I'm also controlling the volume of the kick as well. The more you can control with sounds, the more freedom you have to take it in the direction that you want to. So another thing I like to do with kicks as well is actually filter the lows and the highs with 2 individual filters. So then you can get some really nice, interesting sweeps. If we go down to the rest of the drums, all we have there is a filter on the group, which you can see there. I'm just taking away some of the frequencies, but not all of it. So there's enough rhythm in there still sort of underneath the breakdown. What you can hear there at the end is where that reverb is changing. Actually, this reverb down here, which is a stock Ableton one called large space chorus. What I'm doing here is automating the size of the reverb. So if we go over there and open up the automation, see, I'm just bringing that down. The best way of describing this is, imagine you're on a Pioneer mixer and you have the dry wet of the reverb and you also have the time, and then you get that almost spiral effect down where the reverb closes. It's almost like a filter moving it down. That's effectively what's going on here. Not identical because we're not closing it with a filter, but we are making it shorter with reducing the size, and it can sound really nice and interesting, really nice and dynamic in certain sections of the track. If I just solo this one here as well, it almost creates a riser just from like the reverb, like a transitional riser to help it, but it sounds very organic within the track because it's being created from the track instead of just being a sample. Other than that, on the drums, we don't have too much, bit of echo to just help wash it out. Percussion, keeping pretty much all of this in throughout the breakdown. So we have a different reverb on there that is just Valhalla Supermassive, really good reverb, and I believe it's free as well, so worth checking out. We then have Crystallizer on the send and return. If you've watched this channel for long enough, you will know that Crystallizer is my best friend on a send and return channel, and just love the effects you can get from it. Really, the vocals is kind of where this breakdown gets more interesting. So we can look at this vocal here, which is the main one.
Let's get it poppin' now. 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 Let's get it poppin' now.
So let's go through what's going on there. First thing we have is the filter, which is there. We click on the automation. I would record this in either with my mouse or on my Ableton Push, one or two, can't fully remember. That gives it that really human element then of how it's like coming in and out, and it's not necessarily perfectly in time with the grid. It just seems very natural in its movement. To get the rising effect, we have consolidated each individual, let's get it popping now, into the section that I wanted it to. And then if I go into the envelopes and click on the pitch, you can see I've gone all the way up to about +9 on the transposition, and then brought it back down to about -1 before the original vocal comes in. This really stands out in the track, like to help that rising feeling of the vocal just sort of pitching up. Really helps create a bit more intensity in the breakdown, and it's a fairly straightforward thing to do as well. Below that, we have a arpeggiated part of the vocal. So what I've done there is I have cut out the first part of the vocal, so the lets. I've then gone ahead and popped on a arpeggiator and turned the rate to free rate. So that's where I can really get that intensity and create that sort of smooth rising feeling into where the original vocal comes in. I've then heavily controlled it via gain, as I didn't want it clashing too much with the pitched vocal above it. And then to get that like really quick panning effect as well, I have automated the auto pan. So you get that super quick panning effect and it fades perfectly into the original vocal right before the drop. Other parts of the breakdown, we have the synth layers. So we didn't look at these in the previous breakdown, mainly just because they're exactly the same MIDI as the main synth that carries this track, but they're just different presets. So to run through what's going on these, we have the pad synth, which is just being controlled via a gain. No filtering, just literally volume automation on that one. We can go up one, and I've got auto filter and a utility as well. So we are controlling the movement of the frequencies and also the movement of the volume of that track. Then we just have a layer come in, which is PT.2 on channel 36. And basically these are all very similar sounds, but they're just evolutions of that sound all layered on top of each other. So the synth naturally kind of gets brighter and brighter as the build-up happens, but I don't have to necessarily do any crazy automation or any fancy techniques to get that rising effect. It's just literally stack different layers of synths on top of each other. Finally, we can have a look at some of the effects going on in this track. So I've been using a lot more effects in my tracks recently, just because I think you can get that extra maybe like 5% of depth in your track by picking the right effects. I think what happens a lot of the times when people start arranging a track, they will get to a section, realize it needs some effects, quickly find some effects, and then carry on with the arrangement. Whereas what I've been doing of recent times is before starting to arrange the track, sit there for 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, flicking through splice sample packs, wherever I want to look for sound effects, and just stacking them all up and copy them across every 1632 bars. So then I'm using these sound effects in unique ways throughout the track. So to start with, I have this kind of texture loop. Which is really helping fill out a bit of space in that breakdown as I strip things away. No one probably is really paying attention to that because there's so much else going on in the track. Processing though, it's got a bit of tantra on it, just to give a bit of extra movement. Then have a snare roll. So I'm playing around with the built-in filter and the built-in tone changer in there, so it creates again a bit more tension by just shifting the pitch of that snare roll up. Then just have some white noise, and nothing fancy going on here. And then another standard BGM bass hit. Another white noise riser, and then we have this zap effect. And you can see what I'm doing to this one is reversing it and also changing the pitch. I'm effectively getting a different sample every single time. So that sounds completely different to that, but it's the same sample. And there you go. So in the space of about 30 seconds, not even that, I've used one sample 3 times to get a completely different sound. Another sound effect, kind of like a sub drop, and then I've reversed that. I think this is a pure sub drop, which you can't really hear because I've cut the low end anyway. A dub siren. Another sound effect, just helping the transition of this section. If I deactivate this and then play this section. And then we listen to it with the sound effect on, you'll be able to hear the difference. It will sound a lot more glued together, a lot more dynamic, and just really keep that interest for the listener. Then we've got another sound effect. Very typical garage kind of sound. And then that's all the sound effect and all the automation that we've gone through to create that breakdown there. So there we go. That is the end of part 2 of this video. I hope you found that one useful. Many thanks on all the love on the previous video. I appreciate you all. Have a great day. I will see you soon.